Hello everybody and welcome to Pedro's Movie Cavern. My name is Pedro. I am sat in the dark. The last couple of weeks I've been really thinking and considering doing a podcast or a sort of live stream type of thing. But coming up with an idea for a show that might be a little bit different was quite hard. But I think I've kind of come up to a point now where I've got a really good idea. Each week or every fortnight, depending on how I feel and whether or not people's schedules are aligned and free. Each week I will have a different person on and I will ask them a series of 10 questions. Those questions will basically be about their love of cinema and just getting to know them a little bit more and find out why they love film and cinema so much. I've got something in my beard. I don't know what it is. I actually don't. It's just a white hair. Sorry. Anyway, I'm getting old. So yeah, that's the idea. It's called Movie Mind, like Mastermind, and it's essentially me finding out a little bit more about that person who I'm on. So this video is essentially just a test to see how well the questions work. So I'm going to do the questions. I'm going to answer the questions myself. I came up with the questions, so I'm going to answer the questions myself, and then hopefully at some point in the very near future, I will be doing this with a guest on a show. So the first question, and these are questions I've come up with myself. Some of them I think are really, really good. Some of them might be a little bit boring, but we'll find out. So the first question is, I forgot I had to reboot my phone, so give us a sec, because I am that useless. Right, so question numero uno is... Question number one. If you could travel back in time and watch any movie for the first time on the big screen, what movie would you choose and why? Interesting question to start off. So this is to kind of get a grasp on this person's film... What's the word for it? Not film knowledge, but film tastes. Because whatever you say will dictate what the rest of the conversation is going to be, or the rest of the show is going to be like. So for me personally, if I was to go back in time and watch any movie for the first time on the big screen, what would it be? I could easily choose something like Star Wars, but I think that would be a bit of a cop-out. So I would probably say, and I've seen these on 35mm actually on a big screen. So I'm going to leave off the Back to the Future movies. So if I could watch any movie for the first time ever on a big screen, I'm not talking in digital format. I'm talking in 35mm, like projected, not digital projection. I'm talking film projection. If I could go back in time and watch any movie for the first time ever, I would probably choose something like Raiders of the Lost Ark. Seeing Indiana Jones for the first time, I think, would be absolutely mind-blowing. Harrison Ford's obviously fantastic in it, but the action, the adventure, all of it culminating in a fantastic action-adventure Spielbergian thing. If it's not Raiders of the Lost Ark, then it's definitely going to be Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Having rewatched that recently, I forgot. It just reminded me of how fantastic that film was, the way that film was shot, the fact that it was shot on 35 and 65mm film, the visual effects by Doug Trumbull and Dennis Muren, who did like the light effects, and it just looks incredible. Richard Dreyfuss's performance as Roy Neary is also top tier. You've got really good performances by Melinda Dillon, by Terry Garr, who recently passed away. Just such a good film, and there's never been a film like it since. It's an alien invasion movie, but it's an alien invasion movie that has a sort of idea of hope and not death at the end. So you don't tend to get first contact movies where aliens come to Earth and it's a happy ending. You always get sort of like the destruction. I mean, I think the only film that's ever come close to having the same feel as Close Encounters of the Third Kind might be something like Cocoon, where the aliens aren't there for nefarious deeds or nefarious reasons. They're there they're just nice aliens. And Batteries Not Included is another one that you have nice aliens. But yeah, Close Encounters, just seeing that film projected on a screen on 35 and 65mm film, I think would be absolutely phenomenal. And it is one film that I would love to see, to hear John Williams' score in that 7.1 surround sound. Just, I think would just be absolutely incredible. So that would be question one. Question number two: what genre or subgenre do you feel is underrated or underappreciated? I think, as you know, I mean, my at on YouTube is Cinepocalypse Online, or Cinepocalypse. My original website, or my website, is called cinepocalypse.com, or was cinepocalypse.com. Now it's cinepocalypse.blogspot.com. I have a series of videos on my channel, which is the brief history of post-apocalyptic cinema. So I would say, I think post-apocalyptic films are probably the most underrated, in my opinion, underrated genre in cinema. And that's not necessarily going to be just like the Mad Max type of movie. So it's not going to be apocalypse punks and deserts and modified vehicles and stuff. I'm talking like grassroots post-apocalypse movies, like right from the very, very early stages of the end of the world. So how people survive isolation, and just like seeing a familiar place in a desolate surrounding. So something which would be really, really good to look at is the style of how a film is made. There are multiple different post-apocalyptic movies that have varying different styles. So something like The Road, which is an ecological disaster, which never really said what the cause of the end of the world is, but you see the aftermath of what could possibly be a cataclysmic disaster that has now filled the air with ash and everything is grey and horrible. Or you've got the post-apocalyptic wasteland of Mad Max with the deserts and the modified cars and the punks and everyone being an S&M gimp. Or you've also got how people deal with either the impending end of the world or a virus that wipes out 90% or 95% of the world's population, how they deal with the direct aftermath of that, which I think, for me personally, I find that far more interesting than something like Mad Max, even though I'm a massive Mad Max fan. But I love like the idea of prepper culture and shit hits the fan culture. I do love a zombie movie. Obviously, Dawn of the Dead is one of my favorite zombie films of all time, one of my favorite horror movies of all time, and in my top 5 films of all time. But there are different styles of there are different ways that the world ends in movies, and I think there's a lot of emphasis put on certain types of movies in that subgenre. So like something like the Mad Max movies like Fury Road or Furiosa, those are like the top tier post-apocalyptic, everyone watches, big budget money spinners. World War Z again, or World War Z again, which made quite a bit of money actually, even though it was a fairly big. It was a big movie, but it had a lot of trouble behind the scenes. That shows an apocalypse the end of the world from the point of the zombies. Dawn of the Dead also has the end of the world from the POV of a zombie uprising. But then you've also got stuff like Z for Zachariah with Margot Robbie and Chiwetel Ejiofor, and Chris Pine I think is in that as well. I'm not sure. I think so. Which looks at isolation, like a woman living by herself in a valley in a world that has been devastated by a virus, and this is the aftermath and how she survives. There's mini series as well, so something like Station 11, something like Elevation, which came out last year with Anthony Mackie, which was not the best movie in the world and kind of cribbed ideas from other things, but I think having more of an emphasis on the actual aspect of survival immediately post catastrophe. I think we need to look at more film. We need more films like that. So something like No Blade of Grass from 1970 shows like the direct aftermath of a virus that destroys the wheat crop and grass, and just there's something about old English countryside during an apocalyptic event or just after apocalyptic event that is kind of mesmerizing to me, I think. And I absolutely adore that genre, and I think there should be more mainstream movies that look at that, not the gluttony of very low budget, very cheap films that are available on things like Tubi and Amazon Prime, which people are able to put up. I mean, there's a couple of decent ones on there, but there's also a lot of crap. One I watched recently was called The Last Seven, which is a British horror movie, which sees 7 different people stuck in a sort of limbo-like London, which is completely desolate and deserted, and it's rubbish. Really, it's got Danny Dyer in it playing the Angel of Death, and Tamer Hassan and Simon Phillips, who we're not supposed to like because he apparently doesn't pay his staff. Well, it doesn't pay people who work on his films, so we're not allowed to like that man. But yeah, there's something about a completely empty London or a completely empty British countryside, which kind of really stirs something in me. I mean, I've just listened to an audiobook on Audible, which is, I think it's called A Very British or A Very English Apocalypse. I can't remember, but it's been very, very good. A bit like The Last of Us, but yeah, very good. So yeah, I think post-apocalyptic cinema is kind of slept on by a lot of studios, and there's a lot of good films that could be made from scripts about the end of the world that don't directly involve alien invasions or zombie uprising or massive ecological disasters and stuff. I think just a virus wiping out a certain amount of people, and then the direct aftermath of that, maybe like a week, 2 weeks, a year or so after that catastrophe has wiped out everyone, I think needs to be seen more. Yes, there are a lot, like I said, there are a lot of crap in there. There's a recent one called In the Badlands or In the Lands, with Mila Jovovich and Dave Bautista, directed by what's his name? Paul W.S. Anderson. There we go. That's the guy. Which is it's awful and just not. It's based on a George R.R. Martin book, but the film itself I managed to watch about 25 minutes of before I had to turn it off because it was that bad. And I think we need to but go back to a time where they felt more real. So I recently watched When the Wind Blows, the animated British film based on a book by Raymond Briggs about 2 elderly people preparing for, and then the time spent during, and then the time spent after a nuclear strike on the UK, and it's heartbreaking. It's a heartbreaking movie, but that goes really, really good as a double feature with Threads. If you can make it through Threads, all the way through Threads, one of the most harrowing movies of all time, and then watch a second harrowing movie about the same sort of event, then you are the most dead inside person in the world. So yeah, post-apocalyptic cinema obviously for me is going to be the big one. So question number 3, if I can get into my phone, because I've written them all down. Question number 3, top 3 movies from, and I've put insert decade. You can't see it there. Insert decade. This one I might change up a little bit. The idea is to have someone name their 3 favorite films from a specific decade, but I think I might change it to name one film from 3 different decades that you recommend. So we're going to do that instead. So the first one I'm going to recommend is a film from 1960. I think it's 1960. If it's not 1960, it's 1961. And that is George Pal's brilliant adaptation of H.G. Wells's seminal science fiction novel, The Time Machine, which is one of my favorite sci-fi movies of all time. I don't really like the Guy Pearce version, even though it's directed by Simon Wells, who is the great-great-grandson of H.G. Wells. There's something about that movie that really kind of pisses me off. I don't know what it is. I like Guy Pearce. I like Jeremy Irons. I sort of can tolerate Samantha Mumba, but other than that, I'm not really a big fan of that film. However, the original filmed version by George Pal, starring Rod Taylor and Yvette Mimieux, I think is a great movie. Like, it's a film that I hold dear to my heart because it was a film that I watched a lot when I was a child, and it was a film that kind of desensitized me to screen gore and violence, being when, like, the Morlock George pushes a Morlock, he hits his head on a rock, and then blood comes down his mouth. My mum, and I've said this story before, my mum used to say, don't worry, it's just tomato ketchup. So I can probably say without a shadow of a doubt that is definitely one that I'm going to recommend from the 1960s. So another film from a decade that I think is kind of underappreciated is the movie from the 90s starring Viggo Mortensen. And this is before all the art house movies, the Spanish movies, and Lord of the Rings, and the times that he worked with David Cronenberg. It's a movie called American Yakuza, which is about an FBI agent who is sent undercover into the Yakuza in the States. And it's an action film, and it's kind of low budget, and there was a sequel to it, but it wasn't a direct sequel. It was called Back in Action, or as in the UK it was released as is it Back in Action or Back to Back? In the UK it was released as American Yakuza 2 Back to Back with Michael Rooker, but the first one, American Yakuza, is a very well crafted basically undercover Yakuza movie, starring Viggo Mortensen. It's got some really great action sequences in it. It's quite a subtle movie as well, so it's not a bleh in your face type of thing, and just a really good 90-minute action thriller that doesn't really get the love I think that it deserves. There's another film as well that came out around the same time, from 1995 as well. I think it was from 1995, with Christopher Lambert, called The Hunted, which again is another like American look at the Yakuza, but this time it's from the point of view of Christopher Lambert's character, who I can't remember what he was. Might have been an FBI agent or something. But that film stands out to me because there's an incredible sword fight on a bullet train in that movie, and it's just fantastic. So yeah, those two would be 2 recommendations, I guess, from the 90s: American Yakuza and The Hunted. And then the last one is a movie from the oh god, I don't know what else can. This is the question. These are the questions that I want to pose to people, and I am even getting stumped on these now. A film that I would choose from the 1980s would be. I'm not going to choose the obvious ones like The Thing or The Fly or this or that. Probably the movie Thrashing. I grew up as a skateboarder when I was in my teens. When I turned 13, I bought my first skateboard. I bought pads as well. Wore them twice. Didn't bother wearing them after that. And it got me into skateboarding culture. I was a lot thinner then than I am now. But that got me into skateboarding culture. A movie called Gleam in the Cube as well with Christian Slater, and watching the X Games on Channel 5 here in the UK. One of the highlights of watching the X Games on Channel 5 was watching Tony Hawk pull off a 900 spin on a vert ramp in the best trick category at the 2000 or 1999 X Games in California. And it really just dragged me into this skateboarding world, and I started wearing baggy jeans and big chunky shoes and like hoodies, which is pretty much what I still wear now as a 42-year-old. But is the movie Thrashing with Josh Brolin, which is not the best skateboard movie ever made. It's very much a lot like the movie Rad, which is a BMX movie, and a movie called Airborne from like really early 90s, 92, 93, which is about rollerblading. But Thrashing's a movie that I watched a few times as a teen and then forgot about it and then just remembered it a few years back, and it's one that I've got on. I've got a torrent of it on my hard drive along with a copy of Rad, but I've just ordered a Blu-ray copy of Rad from the States because it was reduced from $29.99 to $14.99. So Thrashing's a cool little movie. Josh Brolin, like I said, is in it. I think it was made the same year as The Goonies, and it has a really good soundtrack as well. It has a very early performances by the Red Hot Chili Peppers. I've just noticed this. If you can see it, it's a white hair, and it's really frustrating me. So I'd say that one, Thrashing, was a very big part of me wanting to become a skateboarder, and along with Gleam in the Cube as well. So 3 movies from 3 decades. So that's The Time Machine, American Yakuza, and Thrashing. So question number 4. Which filmmaker do I think is overrated? Now, this is always going to be a controversial question because people have different opinions on film. Film is very, very subjective. So having different opinions on film isn't a bad thing. It's a great thing, actually, because you can have a healthy debate about things. I am going to say certain things in this video that other people might not agree with. I think that a director that is overrated is someone like Martin Scorsese. Don't get me wrong, I absolutely adore Martin Scorsese's movies. I also think that Tarantino is an overrated director. As a writer, I think he's underrated. As a director, I think he's overrated. If you remove if you remove a script written by Quentin Tarantino and written by someone else but directed by Tarantino, I don't think his films would stand up. I think he directs his scripts the way that his scripts need to be directed, and if he directed a script by someone else, I don't think his directing style would stand up. I think he's a very generic filmmaker, but when you put his dialogue with his directing together and his production design and his idea and like the vision that he has, it all works fantastically, which is why you get incredible movies like Reservoir Dogs, Pulp Fiction, Jackie Brown, Kill Bill, Inglourious Basterds, Django Unchained, Death Proof, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which I absolutely adore. But if those movies were written by other people but only directed by Tarantino, I don't think they would have the same impact that they do these days, because like I said, he is not a director that learned his craft at film school. He is a director that learned his craft from watching movies made by people who went to film school. I love Quentin Tarantino. I've made multiple videos on my channel about Quentin Tarantino, but he is, for the most part, I'd say, quite an overrated director. As a writer, I think he is underrated. I think his screenplays should... I think Once Upon a Time in Hollywood should have been nominated for an Oscar, which I think it did. Inglourious Basterds should have won an Oscar. I think Django did. I think Django won the Oscar. I think Kill Bill, in its full whole bloody affair thing, doesn't really work as a 6.5 hour movie. I think it works so much better as a 2-part series movie. So Volume 1 and Volume 2, I think having it as a one long continuous movie doesn't work. Now, I've read the original script where it was 2-part, where it was one big story. I think it was like 240 pages. It included Gogo Yubari, the woman, the girl dressed as the schoolgirl, played by Chiaki Kuriyama, in Kill Bill Volume 1. Now, in the original script, there was 2 Japanese girls, Gogo and her sister, and there was a bit where they went to Vernita Green's house, I think it was, to blow it up or something. I can't remember. And that's in the original script, but that's not in the... he changed the script, and that's not in the movie anymore. But yes, there is times, and I've said this multiple times, I fucking love Tarantino movies. If it wasn't for Quentin Tarantino, I would barely be into any of the films that I'm into these days. However, like I said, as a writer, phenomenal. As a director, like, he's good. He's not the wunderkind, as people say he is. But again, it's all going to be subjective, which is why I wanted to add this question in. Like, I also think Spike Lee is massively overrated. I also think Christopher Nolan is overrated. I think David Lynch was overrated. Like, I think David Lynch is hugely overrated. I think Denis Villeneuve is overrated. I think basically all the big filmmakers, I think, are lauded too much for what they do. With the exception of Spielberg and James Cameron. I think James Cameron is such a technical wizard when it comes to filmmaking that he can't really do anything wrong. Even with the Avatar movies are for the most part quite I'd say generic plot-wise. However, visually they are stunning movies, and Cameron knows how the hell to shoot a movie. Spielberg's the best living director, hands down. I don't think there is any other filmmaker that is ever going to come close to capturing cinema as well as Steven Spielberg does. Everything from, like, the fact that his first ever movie, a TV movie that was given extra money by European studios to extend for a European release into theaters, based on the footage that he shot for a 1-hour movie of the week, is incredible. And then obviously Sugarland Express, which is quite low profile. Not many people really talk about Sugarland Express as being a Steven Spielberg movie, even though it's his first theatrical, like, American theatrical film. followed that with Jaws, then Close Encounters, then 1941, then Raiders of the Lost Ark, E.T. Like, the man is absolutely legendary. The way he blocks a movie is phenomenal. The way he shoots a movie is phenomenal. I don't think he's overrated. I don't think he gets the praise that he should. I think that man deserves an Oscar for every single film that he makes. But that's just me. Question number 5. Which filmmaker do I think is slept on? Who is slept on as a filmmaker? This is a hard question because I like a lot of movies. I think people slept on Tony Scott. I don't think people realize that Tony Scott was actually a better visual filmmaker than Ridley Scott. Ridley knows how to mount a production. We know this. Gladiator, Blade Runner, like Alien, they are great movies. 100% they are great movies. However, for every good Ridley Scott movie, there are 2 bad Ridley Scott movies. But for every good Ridley Scott movie, there are 2 good Tony Scott movies. Like, Tony Scott made some of the best looking movies of the 80s and the 90s. My personal opinion is the best Tarantino movie is a movie not even directed by Tarantino, which is True Romance, which was directed by Tony Scott. Tony Scott knows how to shoot LA. He knows how to shoot a sunset like nobody's business. And I think in the later part of his career, kind of, people slept on it. He made some great movies. Obviously, Man on Fire is the big one, the later era. But I'd say his remake of Taken of Pelham 123 with Denzel Washington and John Travolta is a fantastic movie. Unstoppable is fantastic. Deja Vu is a lot of fun. Domino, again, is also a lot of fun. These movies are they're big popcorn movies that you don't get anymore. So I think, Tony Scott kind of deserves more, and I think a lot of people slept on his visual style and his directing. But I'm a Tony Scott whore. What can I say? Question number 6. Given your personal taste in movies, what film is a guilty pleasure that people might not associate with you? So in other words, this is a question aimed at finding out what your hidden film of choice is, given, say you were a fan of art house cinema, or you were a fan of specifically Asian cinema. Do you have a film that is classed as a guilty pleasure that people wouldn't technically associate you with? So say you're a big fan of art house cinema, like European art house cinema, or like Lars von Trier movies or David Lynch movies, and these things that you talk about. Like, you talk about Mulholland Drive all the time. You talk about Antichrist or Melancholia all the time, but there is one film that you are embarrassed to tell people that you like. Now, for me, I can't really say that I have a guilty pleasure, because I'm very open with the fact that I have really bad taste in films. But there's also times I will also tell you if a film is shit and I think it's rubbish. Like the other night, I watched Blind Date, the first feature film credit for Bruce Willis. It was directed by Blake Edwards and co-starred Kim Basinger and John Larroquette. And it was awful. It was fucking terrible. I hated it. there was one funny scene in it. It was where Bruce Willis kicks a bed, and the bed breaks, and Kim Basinger's character keeps sliding down the mattress because she's sleeping on silk sheets. And it's very funny trying to see her climb back up. For the most part, though, that film is awful. So I've got no qualms in telling you if a film is good or if a film is bad. Like, I like really bad movies. I love Grease 2. I bought the Grease box set, which had Grease, Grease 2, and Grease the live action, simply because it was the only way at the time that I could get Grease 2 on Blu-ray. I like Biodome, Pauly Shore movie. I like In the Army Now, another Pauly Shore movie. In fact, I like most of Pauly Shore's 90s output. I like Judge Dredd, the Sylvester Stallone movie. I like Hackers. I like Tank Girl. I just like bad movies. I've got 4 copies of Dirty Dancing, and I'm a heterosexual male. Why have I got 4 copies of Dirty Dancing? Because it's a great fucking movie, that's why. So I don't technically have a guilty pleasure movie because I'm very open with the movies that I watch, and I know a lot of people will probably have the same answer, is that they don't technically have a guilty pleasure because at the end of the day they're watching movies. Like, I watched I've got one here which is Summer Holiday starring Cliff Richard, which I showed on a different stream the other day. That's a film I grew up with. Why would I watch a Cliff Richard musical? This is a film I grew up watching on BBC and in summer holidays, or something like Calamity Jane, which is another film I grew up watching because my parents loved musicals. Like, I love Calamity Jane. Singing in the Rain, I think, is one of the greatest movies ever made. So I don't have a guilty pleasure when it comes to certain films. So, right, a studio executive, question number 7. A studio executive approaches you with an offer to remake a bad movie. What are you choosing and why? So, this question is, what would you consider as a bad movie? And given the choice, would you remake it? I have always said that I think the movie Spawn from 1997, which has just got a really fancy looking 4K release from Arrow. I think Spawn is in desperate need of a remake. But what I would do with the remake is I would still cast Michael Jai White as Al Simmons, because Michael Jai White is still in very good shape and could probably still pull off the role. However, I would make the script tighter. I would make the visuals more, like, I guess, I would make them more gothic, more like the Crow, Alex Proyas' The Crow, and I would use more practical effects than CGI. Obviously, you'd have to use CGI for some stuff, but I would use more practical effects for certain things. Like, if you look at the CGI that is in the hell sequence in Spawn, it's very, very dated, even for 1997. It's some of the worst CGI that's ever been put on screen. However, if you look at the hell sequence from Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey from 1991, which uses mostly practical sets and miniatures to convey a hellscape, if you will. Like, what would I choose? I would 100% choose the same way that they depicted hell in Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, as opposed to how they depicted hell in Spawn. I love Spawn. I think Spawn's a really great movie. It's a bad movie. We know it's a bad movie. And I think remaking that film, but with the same story, but a tighter script, some more dialogue, better casting of the villains. Like, don't get me wrong, I like Martin Sheen, but he was really badly cast in that movie. And I think another film that I would probably remake is Max Payne with Mark Wahlberg, because they did a massive disservice to the video game of Max Payne, and I think it should have been more along the lines of the movie We Own the Night with Mark Wahlberg, believe it or not, and Joaquin Phoenix. I think it would work more in that kind of aspect or aesthetic than what was given to us by John Moore, who ruined and basically killed the Die Hard franchise. So Max Payne, I think, would benefit being more closely adapted from the game, and I think Spawn, with a tighter script and better but and a higher budget, I think would make a fantastic superhero movie. Question number 8. You are having a dinner party. Which two people from the world of cinema are you inviting as guests, dead or alive? Okay, so I'm having a dinner party. I'm putting on a dinner party. Who am I inviting, dead or alive, from the world of cinema? The first one, I would choose Clint Eastwood, mainly because I love Clint Eastwood, and to sit there and just chat with him about like his entire filmography, from starting as a secondary character in the TV show Rawhide, going to Italy and doing the spaghetti westerns with Sergio Leone, however you pronounce his name, then taking what he learned on the set of the Dollars trilogy to America to kind of give us a more revisionist type of western, through the Dirty Harry movies to his start in directing, I think would be absolutely just eye-opening. And how at like 94, he's still going. And the last film that he released was last year, called The Juror Number 7, I think it was called. Just to talk to Clint Eastwood about his processes, and just his career would just be so interesting. And another one that I would love to have just to talk to about their career, who is still alive actually, would be Michael Caine, because I have watched countless interviews where Michael Caine just talks about his life and his career and the friends that he made with people like Richard Burton and Richard Harris and Peter O'Toole and Sean Connery, and just the stories that he comes out with. I think would be fascinating to just sit there with Michael Caine and Clint Eastwood, and just I'd be like this. I would be in awe of those men. But then, even if I was going to choose other people, who else would I choose from who would dead? Gene Kelly. I would want to speak to Gene Kelly and say, how in the hell did you choreograph the dance sequences in Singing in the Rain or On the Town or American in Paris? These movies that were like seminal musical movies, and Singing in the Rain I just think is absolutely phenomenal movie. And yeah, so Gene Kelly would be one of them. That was dead. I know that's horrible to say. Who else from the world of cinema who's no longer with us would I like to speak to? Probably someone like Robert Mitchum. Again, to speak to him. No, I know who I would like to speak to. Ray Milland. Talk to him about his career, because his career, he started in the 1940s in noir movies. He directed a movie called Panic in Year Zero, which is again a Cold War nuclear fallout movie. The Man with X-Ray Eyes, and just speak to him about how good his career was. And yeah, it would be so interesting. And how his career basically ended with him showing up in like Battlestar Galactica and just really shit low budget sci-fi shows in the 1980s. Ray Milland would be a really, really interesting person to have, along with Gene Kelly. So yeah, those are the two that I would choose. But I say two, it's not as four. So it would be Michael Caine and Clint Eastwood, who are living, and Gene Kelly and Ray Milland, who have passed away, would be my guests at my dinner party. Question number 9. Where did your love of cinema come from? Was it a specific movie, scene, or influence? My love of cinema has always been there as far back as I can remember. I can't remember one instance. There's no specific scene or anything, but I remember being captivated by stories and the visuals and stuff. I'm not a big reader, so I don't read books. I watch movies. I feel that I can get a full story, beginning, middle, and an end in 2 hours. I will watch that instead of reading a book instead, because I can get the full story and I can visualize. Like, I get the visual of the story on screen. But if I was to pinpoint an era or a time or something that was specifically important to my journey as a film fan, it would probably be 2 instances. It would be seeing Star Wars for the first time as a very small child and being blown away, and my mind being blown by what this thing was. Like, still getting nostalgic like feelings whenever I watch Star Wars now, and I've seen Star Wars fucking 100 times. But seeing that as a very young child, very, very young child, that's one thing that always made me think that this is something that I'm going to fall in love with. And the second instance is Reservoir Dogs. Seeing Reservoir Dogs for the first time. And discovering Tarantino. If it wasn't for Tarantino, I wouldn't know, like I said, I wouldn't know half of the shit that I know. I wouldn't watch half of the movies that I've watched. And it's those two sort of films are really, really, really important to who I am knowledge-wise and film-wise. Right. I could elaborate more on that, but I'm running at nearly 50 minutes here. Then, last question. Do you have any deep cut recommendations that people may not know about? Yes, I do. There is a film from 2002, I believe, called The Stick-Up, starring James Spader and David Keith, directed by Rowdy Herrington, who directed Roadhouse. It is a film that follows a police officer who gets caught up in a small town robbery, and they believe that he is the culprit. And it's a very good, very well made, very just fun caper, and James Spader's fantastic in it. David Keith is fantastic in it. Everybody is on their A game, and no one ever fucking talks about it, and it's great, and I love it. And another film that is a very deep cut, well, I say a very deep cut, another deep-ish cut that I don't think people really talk about is the movie Thursday from 1998, written and directed by Skip Woods, starring Thomas Jane and Aaron Eckhart. It is another crime caper that follows a man called Casey, played by Thomas Jane, who used to be a very dangerous drug dealer who got out of the life and now lives in a suburban neighborhood with a wife with a child on the way. One day, his former accomplice, played by Aaron Eckhart, arrives back on the scene, and, well, one Thursday, returns back on the scene and gets his way into Casey's new life, and Casey has to do what he can to maintain his sanity and protect the life that he has built for himself since leaving the life of crime. Throw into the mix a corrupt cop played by Mickey Rourke, I don't even know what you could refer to her as, like a dominatrix-y type of person, played by Paulina Petrakova, I think her name is, who was a supermodel. She is in this as well. You've got Michael Jeter's in it, and Casey Siemaszko. It's a wonderful film that is never seen, and the first time I ever saw it, I recorded it off Channel 4 because it was on at 3 o'clock in the morning once, and I liked the sound of it, and I watched it, and I loved it, and I think it's a great movie that nobody ever, ever, ever talks about. So Thursday, directed by Skip Woods, starring Thomas Jane. Love Thomas Jane. So there we go. So that is my 10 questions. Like I said, this was a test to see how well it could go. Obviously, when there's another person there, it's going to be a lot more chilled and a lot more open-ended discussion. Like, I'm not going to be just answering the questions as I go along. But for the time being, my name is Pedro. This is Pedro's Movie Cavern. This is the test for Movie Mind, the podcast. Hope you guys enjoyed this. If you would like to see more, just give us a like, give us a subscribe. If you fancy coming on and answering my 10 questions, please do the thing and put a comment in there. In the under the video, put a comment if you want to answer my 10 questions. You want to come on video with me, I will interview you and we will find out more about your love of movies. Put a comment in the comment section, and I'll try and get in touch with you as quick as I can, and we'll arrange for something. But yeah, if this worked. If you enjoyed this, then yes, thumbs up. So yeah, my name is Pedro. This is Pedro's Movie Cavern. This is the test for Movie Mind, and I will see you all very, very soon. Peace. Cheers, everyone. Have a good one.